Welcome back from your challenge. I hope that it went well. This movie, let me show you how I would try to tackle this one. This isn't going to be easy because if we zoom in on the image, we can see that we have an object which we want to get rid of, which is really close to another object. How do we deal with those situations? A lot of times it's about working with selection. So here I'll use the quick select tool and I'm going to click and drag over the selection. I want to select the sign. If you look closely too, you'll also notice that there is some hair coming out behind the father of the bride there. So I'm going to go ahead and make a selection of this, selecting all of this area here, and just looking to make sure I have a good selection. Hold down the Option key on Mac, Alt on Windows. I don't want to select his ear. No need to select that, but just everything else right up to that point. All right, after we have that selection, the next step is to go to Select and Mask because typically, these selections need a little bit of work, so I'm going to smooth this out a touch, add a little bit of contrast, increase my radius and my smart radius. Just want to have better edge detail. And then as far as the shift, I'll drag this to the right to make the selection just a little bit bigger. It's always easier to take a little bit off the edge, so I want to shift it this way. It will help cover up the sign as much as possible. If we go this way, we may not cover up enough of the sign. So I want to make sure I have all of the sign there. So I'll drag that to the right. Now I'll output this just to a selection. So basically first step, make a selection, improve the edges. Click OK. All right, well now that we have that, next step is to think about retouching. How the heck are we going to get rid of the stop sign? Create a new layer. I always like to do my work on new layers. Also, I should point out, in my own real workflow, I use shortcuts for layers. So I would press Shift-Command-N on a Mac or Shift-Control-N on Windows. That opens up the new layer dialog, and I'll go ahead and name this one Clone Stamp because that's what I want to do here. Next step, press the S key to select the Clone Stamp tool or click on it. Options bar, I want to have a brush without any hardness, pretty big brush, and just leave the brush as is. My opacity, I'll leave it all the way up, align turned on, sample all layers on. Next, I'll tap the right bracket key to make my brush even a little bit bigger, and I'm going to Option or Alt-click on an area where we have a good sample of some leaves and just start to click and paint those into this area. The first step really is just to get rid of the sign as much as we can. So that's all I'm doing here. Once we've done that, we'll go to Select and choose Deselect and kind of evaluate the edges. In my case, I think the edges are okay. It's just the plants need a little bit of work. One way that we can blend things together is to create another layer, Shift-Command-N, and I'll name this layer Healing. Press the J key and Shift-J until I get to the healing brush, this one right here, and then Option or Alt-click on some of these leaves and just paint over this. What this allows us to do is to kind of create some new plant type of look here. So in other words, it's not a direct, just like cloning. We're seeing that I could grab from above and bring in some of the brightness that we have up here. I want to bring in some of that bright sunshine light that's coming in from above. Tap the left bracket key, make this a little bit smaller. And really what I'm looking to do is to create or to build a pattern that is hiding this as much as possible. So it isn't drawing attention to itself. So that's why I'm sampling from a few different areas, trying to blend in some of this. It's also actually pretty difficult to do this while I'm talking. I hadn't anticipated that because you really have to pay attention to all the little details. Then once I've gotten to that point, I want to zoom out. Because the trouble is with retouching, you can get so obsessed with the little area that you're neglecting to think about the entire image. And I would even do some retouching zoomed out like this because it's making me realize, yeah, I need to darken up a little bit by the shoulder there. Basically just want the viewer to think, yeah, there's a bunch of plants back there. We can see some sunshine coming in. And as far as the retouching goes, I think that's it. So here's step 1, Clone Stamp. Step 2, Healing on top of that. It's those two together which give this nice result. To finish this bad boy off, I would probably create a curves adjustment. Click on curves, drag that up. For my mask, I'm going to invert that and grab a brush tool. And I hadn't anticipated on doing this step, but as I was looking at it, I just think, yeah, we got to brighten up those plants back there because I think the darkness is also drawing the eye into that area. So by having that adjustment there, let me feather those brush strokes out. What I'm doing is just looking to bring in a little bit of light into that area. And let me take this to a better view so you can kind of see, right? I'm just brightening that up, a little bit less notice to that area. That's also helping to reinforce that this image is all about right here. It's bright, It's high key. It's this moment, bride and her dad walking to the wedding. Step 1, clone stamp. Step 2, a little bit of healing. And then step 3, some work with curves and brightening there. And hopefully you're seeing here, this really was just my first stab at how I would tackle this problem. And it's something I have to do because I have to deliver this image to the bride. So it's a real world scenario. That's my thinking process. That's how I'd approach it. If you did it differently, that's okay. There are always at least 5 different ways to do the same thing in Photoshop. Most importantly, you want to achieve good results with whatever technique you used. For mine, I'm actually noticing one more small problem. It's these leaves up here, they're a little bit too in focus. So, sometimes you look away and you look back and you realize you have problems. All right. Well, anyway, that wraps up the challenge. Hope you picked up a few helpful tips. There is our before and then the after.